Hello and welcome to CHQ Backstage. My name is Deborah Sunya Moore and I serve as Chief Program Officer and Senior Vice President here at Chautauqua Institution. And it is just a delight to have Imani Winds in the studio with us today. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Chautauqua.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So we have 4 of the 5. We have Brandon, Monica, Toyin, Mark. We are so excited to have you at Chautauqua.
Excited to be here. Great to be back.
Good to see you again.
So let's start with a little bit about how Imani Winds started, and then we're going to fast forward to where you are now and the amazing things you have done. And of course, I wondered, did you imagine all of this from the beginning? And Toyin and Monica, I know you are 2 of the original members. So could you tell us a little bit about how did you found this group to begin with? And did you ever imagine?
Well, we were started in 1997, so 25-ish years ago, by our flute player, Valerie Coleman, when most of us were still in school. So I was in graduate school at Manhattan School of Music. She was at Mannes School of Music. Monica was doing her graduate work at Juilliard. And Valerie called me up and said, you know, Toyin, I'm starting this group. It's going to be made up of musicians of color. We're going to play music from the standard quintet, wind quintet repertoire, but we're also going to try to play music by musicians of color, and we're going to play for everyone. It's going to be awesome. Do you know a bassoonist? And so I recommended Monica from our Oberlin days. We were together at Oberlin. And so then Miriam knew her clarinetist from another wonderful summer music program, the Aspen School. And Jeff was a recommendation from another horn player, our original people. So we started out and just got together, ate pizza, and read music and yucked it up quite a bit.
Inspirational pizza.
That's right. Well, I mean, the bonding, it was right away. And sometimes that's overlooked in the beginnings of a group, or it's part of what has made us so successful now is that we've always had a really great bond with each other. And so did we see what we were going to become? I think Valerie saw it, but Monica and I didn't. We weren't anywhere near, we had no idea that it was going to become this behemoth of longest full-time wind quintet in the history of wind quintet, at least in the United States. Yeah. We never saw that coming.
How could you?
Yeah, we didn't see it coming, but the energy was really palpable. As Toyin said, the bonding was incredible at the time. We had a lot of chemistry. We had a lot of fun together. So we were each other's people. We spoke the same language of life. We looked at life in the same way. We looked at things that we wanted to accomplish in the same way. Now, like any successful organization or family for that matter, there's going to be a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. And if everything went well, then I think it would not have lasted, in all honesty. I think we needed to go through certain ups and downs in order to come out to where we are now, a quarter century later, doing this important work. So yeah, we didn't necessarily know it was going to be this big, but it was a snowball rolling down the hill at all points. It never went backwards. It was continuously getting bigger and bigger. And so that was super exciting, to be along for that ride and to continue to be here, to see the evolution of the group in real time as an insider. And sometimes I have to set myself outside of it to recognize what we are to our constituents. And when I take the time to do that, which is not very often, it's a pretty cool sight. I got a good view of it.
I just think of the history of your ensemble, and I see where you are now. And it literally gives me chills to think what you have done for the classical music world. And Mark and Brandon, I'm really curious to hear from you because, of course, you being members that joined after the original members, I am quite sure you joined not only for the great music, but for the mission of the ensemble. And I'm curious, when you each joined, what resonated with you about the group and what feels most important about the group's work personally to you now?
I'd say for me, I joined in 2018, but I had known of the group for many years. They visited when I was a student at Oberlin and performed on the Artist Recital series there. I was very familiar with their recordings and inspired by their artistry, and of course by the original compositions of Valerie Coleman and Jeff Scott. And to come on and to be part of this legacy, this amazing work that the group has done, and to be able to play with people that you looked up to and that inspired you is totally incredible. And so I feel like I always tell people when I joined the group that I was doing many different things before joining the quintet, but what I love the most about what Imani Winds does is that it's a very full and a very whole life. And what I mean by that is not only the performances at a very high level, the commissioning projects, being in charge of what's being written, changing the repertoire, who writes these pieces, and the type of programs that presenters present and that we present, the teaching, the commitment to outreach. So, the list goes on and on. I think for me, the quintet represented the total package of what I wanted for my life. And I feel very fortunate to now be on the train, going down the road.
The snowball down the hill, the train moving forward.
Train is like a station.
What's your image, Mark?
Man, those really nailed it, I think. But yeah, I'm just echoing the same thing. I think for me, it was unique in that I was the first non-original. I was the first new person to join. And so that was an amazing experience. And like Brandon, I had been a fan of the group for years, and they came to Interlochen when I was a student and to University of Michigan, where I saw them play with Wayne Shorter. And I sat there thinking, like, how could I do something like that? Like, to play with one of my heroes in a genre that's totally outside of what I do. And so then when I had the chance to join them, it was kind of just like a complete and utter no-brainer. And I think when all of the new members joined, Kevin as well, I'll speak for him, I think it is this train that you kind of just jump on. And I don't think, we've had 3 personnel changes in 25 years, but the mission has not changed. And I would argue in some ways that the sound hasn't really changed all that much, because we are bringing our individual voices into the group, but Imani Winds just has this sound. And I think having all 3 of us kind of live with that in our youth, we're able to kind of like channel the sound of Imani Winds while at the same time bringing our own voices to it. So I think like, when you hear Imani Winds today, it still sounds like Imani Winds, just with some new voices.
So let's talk about Imani Winds in this larger context of classical music. And here at Chautauqua, we work with lots of program in all arts, dance, theater, opera, orchestra, classical. And sometimes I find that the classical music world moves a little more slowly than some of the arts or other arts forms in issues of representation and diversifying the field. Imani Winds has been doing this for a long time. And as the classical music field starts to be more and more focused on diversifying their audience, diversifying the players, representation on and off the stage, I'm curious how much it feels like finally, and how much it feels like, but there's still so much work to do. Can you talk a little bit about the present day context for you, having been working with this for 20 years, and now we're all focusing on this more?
Well, I'll start that ball off a little bit. Since it was part of the founding of our institution now, of Imani Winds, that it was going to be diverse, I think it is easier for us to keep the ball rolling than, say, the New York Philharmonic, which was not founded to do this, work. So it's an incredible about face that some of these organizations are having to deal with now. But since it has been a part of what we've done since the beginning, we have not just laid on the laurels of being who we are, or even what we are playing, but how we play it, how we intentionally bring it to audiences through programming, through intentional commissions that speak to the times that we're living in, through putting together packages of special programs that are representing different people. Like we celebrate historical people who have meant a lot to the diversification of the world, including a program on Josephine Baker. We learned a lot from your former organization, Tails and Scales, too, with our young people work. We've been trying to keep it on all levels of what we do. From our board, we recently became a not-for-profit. Actually, we were for-profit. We're for-profit for a very long time. But we recently started a not-for-profit board, and we're keeping it the same there. It's a very diverse board, not just racially, but also with the LGBTQ community. Our programming for young people is diverse. And I think as other arts organizations go forward, I think it's more important to think on every level of the organization. Where the money comes from is very, very important. Who is listening in the audience is very, very important. It reminds me of, do you remember that movie Sister Act?
Oh, yes. In
Yes.
fact, my girls recently watched it.
Right.
Even though it's an oldie but goodie.
Right. Remember the nuns were closer there.
Whoopee.
They wanted to get out in the world. So I think the doors are bursting open for organizations all over the world, and it's a little scary, like it was in Sister Act. But I think there's so much inspiration and joy coming out of this work that all these organizations are doing, and I think it's going to be better. Is there still more work to be done by everyone, including ourselves? Yes. I think there need to be more conversations from not just large organizations talking to themselves, but large organizations talking to smaller organizations and vice versa. The smallest chamber music society needs to be talking to the largest orchestra and figuring out how they can do their work better. But it's happening slowly but surely.
I love that bringing things to audiences, and I think about Sister Act. And one of the lines is that Whoopi Goldberg wanted butts in the seats. She wanted butts in the seats, and the nuns wanted to actually go out into the community. They didn't just want to be cloistered away, praying and singing, mass like 5 times a week. And I often think about this in classical music, that we're talking a lot about diversifying, and we need to have representation and the programming. But I also wonder, are we doing the work if you are programming a work by a composer of color, but your audience remains the same? Mm-hmm. Is that really changing things? We go all over the world, and Imani Winds is known for being an ensemble that celebrates diversity in its players and the music that it plays. If an organization brings us for one concert, but the audience remains the same, is the work being done? And I think the answer is no. Mm-hmm. I think you do have to take the Sister Act model, and you do have to go out into the community. You have to invest in young people and education. You have to go out and you have to go to communities where concerts don't happen and play for these people. Maybe then they'll come to your concert, just maybe then. But your audiences will never change as long as you continue to play for the same people. And as Toyin says, that the funding sources and the people who contribute also remains the same. Mm-hmm. I don't think that kind of work will create lasting, sustainable change.
So Brandon, that's a great point. And I just want to acknowledge and bring this conversation to your performance at Chautauqua Institution, because you are visiting us, I think, for the second time. You came over 10 years ago before I was here. So excited to have you back. And I know of purposeful change that is happening here. Slower than we would like change that is happening here. Very specific efforts from, we have our first ever IDEA plan, inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility. We have unveiled it. We have an incredible chief diversity officer. We have our first ever arts education program the last 8 years out in the community year round. And yet, we have not solved this. Our audience itself wants to be broadened, wants to be more diverse, and that's a slow move for us. I'm curious, do you have strategies of what you think organizations should be doing? We have our strategies laid out, we have our plan, and we find that our audience wants to change too. They want to see the us become broadened, and yet it's happening slower than we would like.
I'd say, firstly, there's always forerunners in any field. There's always people that come first with change. And so, there's going to be, things do happen slowly. You talk about us being here for 25 years and, why are things now all of a sudden happening? Well, that's just the way things occur. There's always, individuals or organizations. I think about, HBCUs, for instance, that have been around for 200 years, but for whatever reason, frankly, white people are like, oh, isn't that interesting that there's historically Black colleges and universities out there? Wow, that's so, you're like, oh yeah, welcome to that world. So yes, when there's marginalized people doing amazing things, it does take a long time for the quote majority to kind of understand the quality of that. And so therefore, things taking time, I don't think is a bad thing, because it's just the nature of the world we live in. But how, to get at your question, how does an organization like Chautauqua, I'm going to come back to something both of them said, investing. There are highly qualified diversity experts out there that are ready and willing to do the very specific, I want to call it grunt work, but that's not it. It's more like, the statistical type of work, the numbers. What is the community around Jamestown, around Chautauqua, around Lakewood, Westfield? Where are communities? Where are people in those communities that could be welcome here into the institution, living and doing? What are they doing during the summer times? Do they leave? Do they, so this sort of on the ground, kind of in the trenches, grassroots survey type of work can be a part of it. And we've been asked this question, especially Toyin and I, all of us really, that like how to do it. It's like, pay somebody that knows what they're doing and tell you what to do.
And we're fortunate that we're in that.
You're in that. You're in that. Yes, absolutely. And I know, I should just add really quickly, parenthetically, that Chautauqua was near and dear to my heart. I came here as a student in the high school program.
Welcome home.
Thank you. When I 3 years in a row came in 89, 90, 91. My cousin, who's a dancer in the Alvin Ailey Dance Company now, he came as a dancer during his high school years. And so we've come to Chautauqua many times over the years, and it is a glorious place. It is an absolutely idyllic, wonderful place, and so many amazing memories. But I know exactly what you mean. It is enclosed. It is, even the word institution.
For our 9 weeks in the summer.
Right.
Which is 10 months out of the year, we're completely open and focused on regional community, which is a newer thing for us in this decade.
Right. So, change happens slow. And I guess I wouldn't be discouraged by the pace of the change. I would be discouraged by it not happening at all. If you see, talking about that snowball, the snowball, it has its gun like that, not like that,
It starts as a snowflake.
It's a snowflake. It's a snowflake. Right. So as long as change, and very meaningful change, is happening, even at a slow pace, that to me is progress. That's when things are happening at a good pace. But yeah, checking yourself along the way, I think is and being very critical of the work that you're doing is highly important as well. Over the years, we've had publicists, we've had just folks on our team that have been about trying to get those butts in the seats, but the types of butts we want. I know, right? We'll go off on that analogy forever. But no, it's a good one. It's a good one. But what the diversity, we've gone after that as well, and it's been a slow burn. We have our own chamber music festival that we just finished at the 12th season of our chamber music festival. We specifically go after students that may not be able to afford other festivals. We want, part of our foundation work is to show the scholarships that are necessary for these underrepresented students. And I think we have one of the highest diversity numbers of summer festivals out there when it comes.
You're knocking down those hurdles.
Yeah, at that college level, students that don't necessarily go to Juilliard or Curtis or Manhattan School, but go to smaller universities around the country. Smaller little schools of music that may not have the chance to go to National Repertoire Orchestra, Aspen, Tanglewood, but can come to the Imani. And by the way, the quality is not different. Like, that's very important. The quality of student, the quality of patron, just because it does not represent what typically is seen as the upper echelon, the quality is still there. And so that's, I think, an important, we're not dumbing down our work to diversify.
The other thing I would add, sorry, just quickly to that,
Please.
is in the interim, we're trying to make all these changes, and it's a slow roll down the hill sometimes. Think about what else you can do to kind of champion diversity. And if you're running a festival in a vastly majority white community, diversity could also really mean socioeconomic too. And we're trying to get more people of color at our concerts and at our festival, of course. But in the time that we have, what else can we do in the community? Because what I often see when I travel to smaller towns and communities, that it tends to be more upper middle class in terms of the demographic of classical music. So how can we expand that? I know I've done a lot of outreach work in upstate New York, as far as the border in Malone, and there's so many communities that are just they have a lack of art in their communities, and so there's a lot that you can do in terms of diversity, just socioeconomically too. So.
I have another idea too. We're so close to Buffalo.
Yes.
And Buffalo just had a horrendous thing happen. And so I think maybe audiences are gratifying, but an organization like Chautauqua has so much more that it can give than just a concert. So why not a scholarship for children from that community who might want to play instruments? And then even if they never come to a concert, they are touched by the reach of Chautauqua or something like that. Or dedicate the whole season next year to Buffalo. Go there, and it's a little far, but have musicians go there, play for people there, tell stories of people from there within the concerts that we're giving here. That could be a way, because I think audience is important, but reach, and I'm not just talking, maybe they'll never come, but they'll know that Chautauqua cares. So that's another idea.
What good ideas.
And one more.
Let's hear it.
Because the history of this area is so strong with the abolitionist movement too. So strong. So I think that's other stories that can be told through concerts here at Chautauqua.
I really love your focus on stories, because I think ultimately, the mission of Chautauqua is to explore the best in human values. And truly, you can't do that unless you're bringing more humans together. But we're very focused on gathering, on convening conversation, and on that larger storytelling. I do want to recognize that this year we had our first ever Buffalo Day, which was combined with our first ever Haudenosaunee Day. And so we've been, very focused on figuring out, continuing to figure out, best ways to engage with our community. But I want to end by pulling up a little bit to talk about this field of classical music and where we're going, and make not necessarily predictions, but aspirational dreams of where you think this field could be in the next 5 to 10 years if we do it right. So not just chamber, but thinking of orchestral music, thinking of patrons. What do you see 10 years from now, if we've really done this right, that you think is not only aspirational, but that touches reality?
I would say for me, again, when it comes to programming, something that we consciously do every season is to think about what pieces we play, what stories they tell, and how we want to bring them to audiences. It's something that a program that we have been touring with is a program devoted to women composers. Every piece on the program was written or arranged by a woman composer, and mostly living, and a lot of the works, original ones for Imani Winds. And I say this because I get it from Monica when she introduces this program, but that it may seem like a shocker to people that, there's all this great music by women composers like out there, and the voices of each composer so different and unique and special in their own way. And we in Imani Winds feel it important to celebrate them and hope that at a certain point in time that it won't be so surprising to go to a program and see a whole program of women composers and living women composers. When that becomes a thing and it's not such a shocker, then I'll know like change has really been made.
Nice.
I would add that in 5-10 years that we have made not just a conscious effort, but an actuality in reality of decentering male whiteness. That every classical music concert does not have to be 3 white men that have probably died at least 100 years ago. So this is an offshoot of what Brandon is saying.
Yep.
And that's more daily life versus the
right.
big lift to change that.
Yes, right. And we're seeing it. I mean, and yes, did we have to go through this racial reckoning and a global pandemic and, just these hardships to sort of recognize that this type of change is necessary? Yes, but sometimes that is necessary. World wars happened and we've realized that, fascism is a thing, right? You know what I mean? Like hundreds of thousands of people had to die 75 years ago for the world to recognize that, there's something wrong with how we treat each other. So sometimes really cataclysmic things do have to happen for change to occur. So, it's again, coming back to things don't happen so fast. But again, to answer your question, that's what I see as a way of market change. When every concert on every major at the top, the Big 10 or whatever they call it, big orchestras of every season has a woman or person of color on every concert.
Thank you. Let's go to Mark and then give Toyin the last word.
I think in 5 years, I would, again, just echo everything that's been said, but all the things that we're all realizing, that they just become much more on the nose and much less kind of a token of gratitude or like a let's pat ourselves on the back. Because I think that there's too much of that right now of like doing things for the optics of it as opposed to like
or checking the box.
Right. Mm-hmm. Checking the diversity box instead of like real actionable change. When a really high level chamber music presenter puts a Black Lives Matter sign on their marquee and then takes it off after a month. That to me is optics. I think what we're trying to do as Imani Winds is the same thing that Imani has been doing for 25 years, and the same thing that I think every organization in the country should be doing all the time for just the only reason of like that's just what we should be doing and no other kind of ulterior motive. That's where I want to see it in 5 years, 10 years,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Toyin.
First of all, love you, Deborah. I'm
Love
so
you.
glad to be
Love
here
you.
with you.
Classmates at Oberlin
Yes.
with some other OBs. This is very exciting.
So I think I want us to be out of the echo chamber in 5 years. I think we're talking a lot to ourselves right now, and I want us to be making concerts that heal people throughout the spectrum of ideas and thoughts and class and race. I think that's the way to go forward, is to stop thinking about how we can make ourselves better and how we can make the world better. And that has to do with programming, who's involved in all sorts of ways. But I think if we think about that more rather than just saving our own skins, then I think it's going to work out. Whatever happens, it will have been worth it.
I'm so proud of the work that you are all doing, and I just think of being classmates together, and I think this is, at that age in our lives, hopefully we were thinking of good things, but I know that for myself, everything was so me-centered and where I was going to go. And to see the work, Toyin, that you've done here, Monica, Brandon, Mark, this hits that feeling of let's do some good in the world. And I just want to thank you for your work, for how long you have stuck with this, and that you are looking at that 5 to 10 years of what we can do. Thank you for sharing it with Chautauqua and the world.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks
Deborah.
for having us.
Yay. Thank you for joining us on CHQ Backstage with Imani Winds. We will be following their Grammy path and their 5 to 10 years into the future.
CHQ Assembly is made possible through the collaboration and innovation of Chautauqua Institution's full-time and part-time staff, seasonal staff, and many volunteers, as well as participants like you, whose engagement, gifts, and subscriptions sustain our mission.